Good morning, good evening, Helen.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, there we go.
Hello. Are you in Australia?
Yes,
Okay.
very excited. Thank you for staying up late.
Oh, no problem. How is it feeling over there?
It's look, we're on the west coast and in our lovely little bubble of protectiveness of borders shutting and closing. So we're all good, but it's very warm. So we're mid-30s at the moment.
Mid-30s. Okay. That's warm. 30 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
I used to know those numbers. Now I'm kind of having to think back about how many degrees that would be. That would be a nice pool. So it's summer.
It's
Where's the
I probably prefer it under 30. Where does that go to? 86 Fahrenheit.
86. Yeah.
Hi.
Hot or cool for you? Is that warm or cool, Helen?
We have been getting it up to 38 recently, so it's a little bit cooler.
Mm-hmm.
But my preference is sort of 26, 27. So I'm originally from the UK, so I still have Northern Hemisphere blood.
Hello.
Good evening, Mike from New York.
Hi, Alya.
This is
Hi,
really
Helen.
late for you. Huh?
Hello, Mike.
How are you?
Good.
Good day, Helen. I was down there years ago
Band-Aid.
for a while. What's up?
You have a Band-Aid on your forehead.
Yeah, you got a little cut.
Where are you, Mike?
I'm in New York.
All right.
Yeah. Where are you?
Perth, Western Australia.
Oh, yeah. I was out there. I'll tell you how many years ago it was. It was the America's Cup, where I think a guy called Dennis Conner was in it. You remember that? No.
No.
It was in Fremantle.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah. Not
Yeah.
far
No,
from where you-
I came out from the UK to here. 22 years ago, nearly.
Yeah. Well, I was there in Australia before that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I drove across the Nullarbor and made it.
Oh, nice. It's on our to-do list.
Yeah, you haven't done that yet? Yeah, I was there just sort of drifting around as a young guy.
Yeah, a lot of people travel around, probably done more traveling than we have to admit.
Yeah, Perth is out there all by itself.
Very much. Yep. We've had a few years in living in New Zealand. I quite liked New Zealand.
You know, I never got there.
Mm.
So I was a young guy and I figured, I'll get there next time. Needless to say, the next time hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's a very nice place to be at the moment.
Yeah, I heard
So-
38 degrees though. That's pretty rough.
Yeah, it's cooled down a bit today. Well, I think we're around 31, 32. It's still hot,
Yeah, it's hot.
but I can't be a whinging pom, so I can't complain.
Yeah, I went out to a weird place. You may know it's called Rottnest Island.
Mm-hmm.
You know that place?
Know that well. Did you get to meet your quokka?
I don't know what that is.
They're the little animals that are inhabitants of Rottnest Island, which is
Oh, yeah.
where the name came from, because
Dutch, right?
they thought that they were rats, so
Right.
it was rat nest.
Right, exactly.
So that's where Rottnest. So the little quokkas are the little animals that have become a little bit infamous with the selfie photographs.
I'll bet.
So anyone famous that comes here goes to Rottnest Island and takes a selfie with a quokka.
Yeah. Yeah, that was they took a boat out there and then they stopped so people could dive off of it, and it was rocking back and forth. So I think everybody, I wasn't so embarrassed, but I think everybody was just puking their guts out.
Oh,
Myself
yeah.
included. It's horrible.
It can be quite a rough journey, particularly coming back when the sea breeze kicks in.
Oh yeah, this is an island off the coast of Western Australia that has these little animals that look like rats. I think it's
Mhm.
probably the only place in the world they're found, right? Is that right?
I think, yeah, I think it's their main area. I'm not sure if they are found elsewhere, but it's,
I think so, but maybe not. Maybe they are.
I don't know. But yeah, it's a very popular location. Only a few people are allowed to live on the island. Rest of it's holidays.
Yeah. I don't remember that much about it, to be honest. What the
Oh,
island
look,
is.
I mean, there are beautiful beaches. There's very little traffic, so most people get around on bikes.
Yeah, I don't recall even what we did there. I think I was sick and laying on the deck of the boat, I got the worst sunburn. I was
Oh
actually
no.
my legs. Yeah, I remember my legs were actually they were bleeding
Wow.
from the burn I got.
Mhm.
Okay.
So Alya,
Yes.
where are the rest of our friends?
I don't know. This is the first time I'm doing it, and
Yeah.
here in this time zone, it seems late for the US.
I was asleep. I woke up about 10 minutes ago.
Oh, well, thank you
Oh,
for doing that.
has many people registered?
I don't know. I don't get the
Oh,
registration numbers. We'll see. But if it's good, 3 is fine. I mean, it says 3 be fine. You
Yeah, why not?
can, we'll see. I'll wait a few more minutes, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
you've done these workshops before, Mike?
I did one. I guess it was the last month, with Julia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you do that one?
No, it's not been in my time zone, but I've done about, I think we've worked out I've done about 7
Oh,
of
yeah.
the like the programs with Julia and Lysanthia.
Mm.
So I was kind of part of when they did their pilot study on the narrative medicine courses.
Yeah. Oh, so you know a lot about narrative medicine then.
Through them, yeah. Oh no, I looked only through. I haven't done. I keep looking at Columbia's program, and then I just do
How did
another.
you find out about it? That's I'm curious to know.
How did I find? Lysanthia posted on a pain group that I'm in, and was asking for people to come and be part of this pilot study. So I signed up, and then I
So
kept
you-
signing up.
So who posted it? I'm sorry.
Oh gosh, I'm going brain dead on the Lysanthia and a friend of Julia's who
Oh,
did
okay,
the
yeah.
they both did the Columbia
Right.
narrative medicine course together.
Yeah, I was
And
with
then
this group as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was we were the first group really.
Mm.
And it was it was mine. It was it's such a game changer for me. When I did the program, as I was doing it, it was like it took me 2 years to finish, and it was pretty incredible 2 years. While working and while doing it asynchronously, and then doing the workshops when you go in, when they were in person, the workshops.
Mm.
And that was incredible, that experience. I can't tell you.
Oh, you went to workshops that were in person, or you were doing
Yeah,
it
I mean,
over the Zoom?
no, we did it's an asynchronous course, right? It's
Mhm.
asynchronous.
Right.
So all the coursework is you can do it online, and you
Right.
can do it in your time frame. It's not like you
Right,
have
of
to
course.
go on at a set time. You can listen to the lecture, you can do the work, and in your own time, whenever you can break away from what you're doing. It's not like you have to follow the time schedule. So
Right.
if you're doing it in Australia, it's definitely possible.
Mm.
Because they don't do it like live. The live component is done in person when you go to New York, and when we were, it was offered as an option, but everybody came, and it was before the pandemic, of course, and it was such an experience to meet everybody in person, for
Oh, so you
sure.
got to go to New York to do this?
Yeah. I've been to 3 workshops in New York.
So it's just the 3.
Well, every year they offer it, and I'm like, I'm going to come again.
Right.
Now with the pandemic, I haven't been. They didn't.
But-
They had the last one, online, and it was a very different experience. But it was still very good. I mean, I feel because you meet the great leaders of this work, Rita Sharon, and there's so many of the professors who. Rita Sharon is the one who kind of imagined this whole program and created this whole program, and she's quite famous. And I was starstruck when I saw her, and I was like, oh my God, I've read your books, I've read everything, and I took a picture with her. I was like, oh, you're my idol. And she's a very humble, very kind, very gentle person.
What is her name again?
Rita Sharon.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
Oh,
she's got quite a few like even on sort of like TED Talks and YouTube videos. She's quite like, when you listen to how she started out and her her own story, it's quite inspiring where she sort of came from. And
I guess we'll start. I mean, if people join in, we can just talk about narrative medicine. I mean, I'm happy to. When I talk about narrative medicine, people are always like, "What is that?" Like, what is that to me? Even people in medicine, what does that mean? Well, what do you guys think it means?
I've done a few sort of introductory kind of workshops to sort of physios, and it's always something I struggle to go, what actually is it? And I end up sort of describing it more as a something that helps you to gain skills in listening and understanding and comprehending, for me, the patient story. But it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like every time I try and describe it, I just go, oh, but then I'm also missing out on all the self learning that you know, the growth in your own personal stuff. So I struggle immensely with that one.
I think it also is the listener, as you say, Helen, to understand the patient's story and then to sort of apply that story to their healing.
Yeah.
Even in cases of physical disease, perhaps.
Right. Yeah.
So, go ahead, Alya.
No, I want to hear you first.
I think I've uttered the extent of my knowledge. Yeah, I mean, this can apply to physical or psychological trauma, right? And to help a healthcare provider obtain an idea of how this person may have ended up in the place they are,
Mm-hmm.
Which might be attributable to things that have happened in their lives, which at first might not appear to be related, perhaps, to what their disease or trauma or state of mind is. So I think Alya, I think, and Helen, in my mind, it enables the healthcare provider to really obtain a more complete picture of who the patient is, and as a result of that, to be able to prescribe healing to them more effectively.
I think it reminds. I think you're right. Like, it reminds me of that where they say sort of like that therapeutic alliance and that connection between two worlds meeting. And I think you're right in that. It helps you to have that sort of curious exploration of the other world. You know, that complete picture of who that other person is, and
Right.
be able to sort of just explore it,
Right.
guess, more effectively, so that then that does enhance, you know, the care or the journey that they're on, that you're joining them with.
It just occurred to me as we were speaking that knowing the story of the patient's story may also help a healthcare provider to recommend some preventative medicine
Right.
for them as well. It's not just what they may be suffering from at the moment, but how do we prevent this individual from suffering in the future as a result of knowing more about them? Is that part of it, Alya?
Yeah. I mean, I also good evening or good day or good morning, Josephine. I wanted to hear from you, and it's going to be a small group, so we can keep our mics off, we can be unmuted and just kind of be. I teach narrative medicine in the University of California here in San Francisco to students, medical students, residents. I try to teach it to my colleagues. And I think what it exactly encompasses, for me, it encompasses the art of medicine. And it's more of it's going back to the old ways of connecting to people, like, you know, through understanding them, understanding their condition. And I call it the context of care. I call it, because caring for people is in context of who they are and how they're coming to you and what they're coming to you with, not just the condition. It's all things and or related that encompass that condition. And it involves the story. It involves it involves listening. It involves really paying attention and being present with that connection that you're making, because I see it day to day, every day, how we have been disconnected, with electronic record and with this fast pace and with the medical system, kind of 15 minutes, you have to just do things and do orders and do this. There's so many to-dos that we lose sight of what people are struggling with. And even doctors are struggling with, and nursing and the whole system is struggling with that connection. And then when I teach it, I teach the methodologies of narrative medicine, like not to, for people who want to know, well, what do I do? How do I do that? How do we have, and I say to the students, it takes 5 minutes. It takes 5 minutes to just enter the space that you're going to enter and hold it sacred, because that in 5 minutes of your, as you walk into that space, honor it and be very vigilant about what who holding that space for somebody, and being very attentive to everything that's happening visually, by hearing, by sound, by and then comes the other parts, which is the creative works of using literature and poetry, and because you're teaching, how do you listen, how do you visualize, how do you, and what is the reflection of those experiences, and how do people, and the other parts of narrative medicine is, how do people understand their condition through, and with art, with healing, and reflecting those ideas or their struggle through creative means. And then there's a wellness component, and then there's the ethic of narrative medicines. It's just so much. I mean, so much is there, and I find it fascinating. And you're right, every time you say what is narrative medicine, it's a different response. It gets more and more complex.
I think the one thing that I personally really noticed is learning the skills through the close reading practice was a significant change to sort of my burnout levels, because I was coming in with a sort of an observer rather than kind of coming too much into the patient story. So it was, I could observe and I could kind of come in on that. Okay, let's just look, just observe and close read that story, rather than go into it and then feel like I'm kind of swamped within the story. So it allowed me to be engaged and be connected without being absorbed into it, which for me was, hugely beneficial, because I could then kind of just, I don't know, it just seemed to be less stressful for me.
Right. Witnessing, being a witness, just bearing witness to someone's pain, just bearing witness. That's really sometimes what people need. They just need you to be just present with them and just witness them and see them and hear them without you trying to meddle with too much, and try to fix it. It's really just understanding and just allowing that expression. Josephine, we're talking about what narrative medicine, what do you think narrative medicine means to you?
Well, so this is the second time I've ever come into one of these workshops, and the first one was really awesome, and I came into it more from a personal perspective, just because somebody that I know in Australia actually send me the link. This would be really good for you, because every time we talk about images, like, she's a physiotherapist who takes some of these approaches, like it's about your story and less about your pain. And so that basically is kind of how I would frame sort of that, what it could be, like, just hearing from you a little bit, and it's more about your story and less about your pain. And I like how you say it's about the context of care. because not that I've used this specific, pedagogy or therapy before, but in some way, shape, or form, that's what I've done in some of the small work that I've done, because I used to do emotion coaching for seniors that lived in long-term care. And that was always my approach, was just to see them and sit with them and hear them. And it was something so difficult to help somebody else do. Like, our system is just broken in so many ways that I feel like people are broken because the system is broken. And I don't really think it has to be like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really interesting way to help people step outside of their bodies. That was the one thing that came about from the first session workshop that I did, was just like the perspectives that came out of the one piece of art. I was just, wow, I was in awe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Alya, could I ask Josephine and Helen what they do professionally?
Oh, sure. Well, I'm a well-being consultant and I live in Calgary, Alberta. And prior to the pandemic hitting the world, I was, one-on-one with elders in long-term care. But I became non-essential, and I rebranded and went sort of an organizational direction. And I work primarily with caregivers. Still working in that area to help seniors. And I know caregivers care for other people other than seniors, but 80% of the people that caregivers care for are seniors. So so that's my work. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a physiotherapist in Perth, Western Australia at the moment. And I specialize, I work in a pain management department. So I specialize in persistent pain.
Oh, interesting. Alya, I was thinking if I can add something.
Sure, please.
As a teacher, at first I felt somewhat, like I might not be in the right space here when I joined the first group. But now, as we're talking, it just occurred to me that part of my role as a teacher, and I'm thinking about a specific student that I have, in helping the student, not just to learn things, but more than that. If I know their story, right, that can be a really significant factor in the way I interact with this student and what I might expect of them. I have if I may, I have an example. There's a young 15. I teach high school, and one of my students is if most of them are around this age, about 15-year-old young lady, and she suffers. She shared with me, because I could see some of the telltale signs of how she's fidgeting and just her behavior in class, that she suffers from anxiety. She sees a therapist for it, and it affects the way she performs and the way she behaves and interacts in the classroom. And I delved more into her story, and I'm wondering if, as physicians and people involved with people, as therapists, whether you find this to be true, but I was able to sort of empathize with this student, and I told her so, because it turns out she suffers from anxiety and panic attacks, and as it so happened, and she's in therapy for it, if I didn't mention it. But as it so happened, it was these are things that I've suffered with throughout my life, and I shared that with her. So we've developed this bond where we talk about our therapists and things like that. And I've been able to really get to know this young student, and I think the more I've learned about her, and the more I've been able to share with her about my own experience, not only the more she's being able to rely on me for support, but the more I've been able to more effectively be her teacher in the classroom as well. I think that sort of comes back to what we're talking about here. So I guess my question is, or I guess it's a question, do you ever find that a person's story may allow you to empathize with their story through your own experience, and whether or not that's something you would necessarily share with a patient or a client?
Well, empathy is putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, right? And really connecting, I think, and being observant of, we all have our own experiences, and they always teach you in medicine not to share too much of yourself, because you really want to keep yourself very objective. It's that objectiveness that will taint. If you become subjective, you'll be tainted. But I think if the art of medicine is, again, being very attentive and in a very generous way, that's authentic. And when you practice this and you can build that connection, you're sharing your own story too, but it also expanding on that, and allowing them, patients, to see you as a human being and not something in the hierarchical. It's not.
Mhm.
That's the difference, I think, that it makes. And especially in adolescence, they see this kind of, you're this and I'm that, that
Right, of course.
separation. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start with our session. It's a small group, so we'll keep it intimate. And I appreciate, I think it's really neat how we can open up the space all over the world now with Zoom and connect in this way. So I thank you for making time for this workshop. Here's a screen. Let's see how to. So I guess I'll start with, we're going to start with, we're going to do some, it's more about poet Robert Hayden. And in America, it's February is Black History Month, or Black, African American History Month. And I think it's important to recognize that art, literature, music, it's so multifaceted and multidimensional, and keeping that in, I think having an awareness and building this repertoire of what we need to share is important. So I wanted to talk about a poem by Robert Hayden. And he was born Asa Bundy Sheffy in a very poor family in Paradise Valley in the 1930s, in a neighborhood in Detroit. And he had a very difficult and emotional, traumatic childhood, and was raised by foster parents, and had extreme nearsightedness. You can see that. I don't know if this. You can see that with his glasses. And he turned to books rather than sports in his childhood. And after graduating in the 30s and, going to college at Detroit City College, and then later got a scholarship and got a graduate degree in English literature at University of Michigan. And he was a teaching fellow of Michigan's English department, and eventually became the first African American to be appointed as a consultant in poetry to the Library of Congress. So very much a pioneer, in this work, and wanted to talk about his poem. And let me see, how do I go to the next? Okay, so we'll talk about this poem, and I want you to take some time just reading the poem to yourself, and then we'll have maybe one of you read the poem out loud. Also, I wanted to just, I guess we should practice. Everybody knows how to use the chat, but we don't have to, I mean, we can use a chat, and actually, if you wanted to just later on, just as we're reading, as we're doing the, whoever reads out the poem, they can type in certain words that stand out or resonate with you, and just put it in the chat, and then we'll talk about it. So we'll start with just reading it to ourselves. And then I'll take a volunteer to read it out loud. Sorry, I'm sorry, moving it. I don't know who would want to read it out loud. Are you ready to read it out loud?
I'll read it if you want.
Okay.
Okay. Sundays too, my father got up early and put his clothes on in the blue-black cold. Then with cracked hands that ached from labor in the weekday weather made banked fires blaze. No one ever thanked him. I'd wake and hear the cold splintering breaking. When the rooms were warm, he'd call, and slowly I would rise and dress, fearing the chronic angers of that house, speaking indifferently to him, who had driven out the cold and polished my good shoes as well. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices?
I'd like to actually have somebody else read as well.
You didn't like that?
I did like it. Sometimes it's nice to
Yeah, sure.
again.
I'm happy to.
Yeah.
Sundays too, my father got up early and put his clothes on in the blue-black cold. Then with cracked hands that ached from labor in the weekday weather made banked fires blaze. No one ever thanked him. I'd wake and hear the cold splintering, breaking. When the rooms were warm, he'd call, and slowly I would rise and dress, fearing the chronic angers of that house, speaking indifferently to him, who had driven out the cold and polished my good shoes as well. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices?
So now in the chat, if you just wanted to, I mean, you can even just blurt out, you know, what words or phrases resonate with you, or ideas that call to you.
I think the first thing was the blue-black cold. That's just, I think with the use of color, it just created such an image and picture and experience all in just a very simple phrase. It's like you can feel that.
Feel that. Blue, black, cold. You can
Certainly the cracked hands create an image with which I can identify from my own dad, who worked with his hands quite a bit. It's certainly a powerful visual for me anyway.
That kind of like follows on, doesn't it, with the cracked, splintering, breaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it carries forward.
I do, as I read it, I do wonder about the use of the word banked as an adjective. Fifth line there. Does anybody sort that out?
Yeah, we'll hear from Josephine.
Yeah.
And then we'll keep going.
Yeah, just what hit me more so were the emotional context possibly behind no one ever thanked him. And then at the end, in the last verse, or whatever it would be called, speaking indifferently to him. I just found that interesting because that is also, not being thankful. Yeah, that's what I picked up. I don't really understand it quite yet. So
You want to read it again?
no, it's okay. I think it'll come as we discuss
Yeah.
it. And yeah.
Helen, do you have any other places or any words that?
Yeah, I think as Josephine pointed out, I kind of saw there's almost like that story with the no one ever thanked him, speaking indifferently to him, and then the question at the end, kind of like what what did I know? And I sort of read that as his father's communication that nobody kind of acknowledged. It's almost a case of, well, what do I know about what that story is, or how he's expressing himself? It's like the love's austere and lonely offices. I just sort of thought, well, how it's that sort of no one acknowledged his recognition of the work that he did, but he's questioning, well, actually, what do I know about the meaning behind that work almost?
Yeah, and it stands out. What did I know? And then it's repeated. What did I know? Why do you think there's a repetition there? That stands out to me. I wonder about that.
There's an emphasis, isn't there, in repetition? Like it's important for us to, as the reader, to notice those words.
Mm-hmm. And you could read it like, what did I know, as a statement. And then you can say, what did I know?
Sometimes the second one, like, when you ever ask yourself a question, like imagine asking yourself that question about anything. Your first response is like, well, I don't know. Even like when I'm like, I don't really know what this poem's about yet. And then the second time you ask yourself, it's kind of revealing, like, well, what did I know? Oh, I like, there's something revealing to me here,
Yeah. It's acknowledgement of that question itself. And then it opens up the curiosity of that question.
Like there's actually something to know here.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Mike, you had mentioned banked.
yeah.
Right. When I read this poem and before as well, and I didn't even think of that, the banked being a verb.
Well, I think it's from labor. Banked to me here is an adjective, but I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
How to use it, how to read it. Does anybody know?
Read it again. Read it again.
What, that one line?
Yeah, that whole line.
What's the whole thing's one sentence. Do you want me to read it from the beginning, just the first part?
Yeah.
All right. Sundays too, my father got up early and put on his clothes and put his clothes on in the blue-black cold. Then with cracked hands that ached from labor in the weekday weather, made banked fires blaze. No one ever thanked him.
I'm so curious about the word bank now.
Yeah, I looked it up. It didn't help. Yeah.
But you almost think about that. I think about like a riverbank and the protection on the, like, you know, there's almost, is that giving a sense of protection of the fire's blaze?
Mhm.
You know, there's that.
Maybe.
To me, it kind of connects in with that. Something's banked up. Don't know.
And it's almost like it's a cornerstone. I mean, I imagine this, you know, this place in the house. It's a very cold place. And he's made this fire. I mean, it's in the corner and this bank, like you said, protected. And it's blazing, you know, it's his effort in creating this warmth.
There's the element also of it's, if you think of them kind of on that monetary banking, you're saving for something. So there's a preparation, and there's almost like a journey within that someone has prepared something and saved it, and now it's come to fruit.
Right. Very curious word.
I think I found something. Is that cheating?
No.
Yeah, I put.
Why do you ask?
I don't know, because I'm doing it sort of surreptitiously. I thought.
No, we can.
To
You
bank
can.
to bank a fire means to build a wall out of rocks or stones around the fire pit, or to build the fire next to a rock or dirt wall such that it blocks the wind.
Mm.
If
Yeah.
the coals from the fire protect it well enough, there usually will be enough heat in them to easily start a fresh fire in the morning. So, yeah, I think what we're learning here is building a wall of rocks or stones, and maybe there'd be enough heat. What I'm gathering here is that this man, the father, and of course the son who's living with him, live in a place. They're not wealthy. He
Right.
has to build a fire in the house, the purpose of which, as you see in the next line, you know, when the rooms were warm, right, he'd get up and get dressed. So the father is getting up early to, you know, with his cracked hands that he's been laboring with during the week, and he's making a fire to warm the rooms in the house by arranging stones and things like that. So I'm getting the picture that this is not this is a poor family.
Right.
After you sharing that, Mike, it makes me think that because I know one of the like survival techniques is to build a fire, have rocks around the fire, take the stone, because now it's been heated, and put the stone in like a room, and then that stone would give off heat in that, you know, small space.
Maybe so, yeah. But yeah, because he also says maybe that's right, Josephine, because the word fires is plural. That may, I don't know if that means he's doing it every day, or maybe that speaks to what you just said.
Well, if no one ever thanked him, it sounds to me like there's, you know, not just people that he's living in the house with, but maybe even other people in a community or on the street or in a row of houses, or I don't know.
There's not an emphasis on the labor in the weekday weather. I mean, his hands cracked from the labor in the weekday weather, and the effort it takes to create this warm space, this, as you would imagine, protected fire, and to make it blaze in this cold space.
Right.
You know, there is, and then the sense of no one ever thanked him, with
Yeah,
all the,
and Alya, not only are father's hands cracked from laboring throughout the week, and in the weekday weather would suggest maybe that he's laboring outside, and we already know it's cold enough outside to have to build a fire to warm the home in the morning. But also his hands are aching already, and that's pointed out there too. And I also like to point out the fact that there's something going on in this house too, because
Mhm.
he talks about the son talks about getting up and getting dressed and fearing the chronic angers of that house, which suggests to me that there may be some things going on in the house that aren't so good. Maybe there's some family issues.
And where do you think, why Sundays? And why winter?
Sundays is traditionally a day off. I mean, of all days, even including Saturdays, Sundays is the day when one is thought to be entitled to rest
Mhm.
from their labor. And Sundays too, Sundays also.
Right.
There's no respite for the father in this.
It's almost like even on Sundays, this also happens.
Oh yeah, that's what it is, I think, for sure.
Who do you think the character is in this this poem? Who's speaking?
It's interesting how, Mike, you said the son, and I
Yeah.
was like, why? Like
Mhm.
my initial words, I was then looking to see, do we know? I mean, we're assuming it's a child, as in, because we've got the my father, but I was curious what made you go to a son.
Only the fact that I'm thinking of this almost in an autobiographical sense, that the son, Robert Hayden,
Mhm.
was speaking, and it didn't occur to me otherwise, frankly.
Yeah. So if we didn't know the author, it could be anybody.
Yeah, sure. And I think you may have said some things earlier about his upbringing that reinforced that idea in my mind that this
was him
Yeah.
talking.
he may have had a difficult life growing up. But I'm really interested in what the chronic angers
Yeah.
are.
What kind of character? What kind of person is whoever it is, whether it be Robert Hayden or a child or a daughter, or or just somebody in the house. I mean,
I automatically go to a sort of a teenage, young adult in
mhm.
the don't know why. I mean, whether that's just that there's no sort of thoughts in there to help. It's like there's no indication of an idea to help the father with this task.
What gives you an impression that this would be an adolescent? What words or what? If we just go to the literary text, give you that impression.
I think it's and slowly I would rise and dress. I there's no enthusiasm to get up and get going, which I would think with a younger
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
it's like when the rooms are warm, he'd call. I don't know. I suppose it's he'd call and slowly I would rise and dress, and the shoes have been polished.
Right.
It's not a person that's independent and managing their own cleaning of the shoes. There is still that fatherly, they're doing things for them.
But Helen, if I could add to what you're saying, I agree with you. It's an adolescent too, because the line that he spoke indifferently to his father, that's typically not something that a younger child would do, or if they are doing it, they wouldn't think to express it that way, or be aware of that. But it's almost I get the idea that there's maybe speaking sort of dismissively or maybe even disrespectfully to his father, and I think that's typically something you'd expect of an adolescent also. And another thing that, if I can just add, that occurred to me, that this is a family that's, perhaps not, certainly not wealthy, maybe poor. The fact that he refers to his good shoes, that indicates to me or suggests to me that, maybe he only has one pair of good shoes, and those are the ones that get polished. But that would reinforce to me the idea that this is a poor family.
What do you make of the father? What do you make of his character?
I think he may be angry, because I'm still trying to figure out why the child fears the chronic angers of the house, and he speaks of love's austere and lonely offices. Austere would mean strict or rather severe. So I'm seeing the father maybe as at the very least, maybe someone who's not happy. But he does his best to care for his family.
Yeah.
Does anybody else see it that way?
And yeah, go ahead, Josephine.
Yeah.
Or Helen.
I was just saying it's quite interesting, because the sort of like the picture that I'd created of the father was quite different. I didn't connect the anger with him, because I'm just seeing this as, almost acts of love in any way that he can present it. So it's the going out and working to provide. There's the provision of the warmth and the creation of the fire, and ensuring that all these things are happening. And I mean, it's he's up in an environment that's cold, splintering, breaking. I mean, this is not a nice environment for the father to be in, and yet there he is, continuing to work on the Sunday as well, to ensure that the provision of a warm house for his family, ensuring that the the good shoes are polished, so there is a pride in him taking care of the family, how the family is sort of presented to the world. I mean, that's the reason why we polish our good shoes, so that potentially, whether that's a connection to going to church, wearing your good clothes, it's on a Sunday morning, I don't know. And so I sort of saw that love's austere and lonely offices was that it's almost like this is his language of love, and potentially he is austere, and he's not, it's not a easy man maybe to get to know or connect with, but when you look at it, this is how he is expressing his love for his family.
Yeah.
What do you make of love here? How is love presented? How should love be presented?
in different ways, isn't it?
Different
I mean,
ways.
there's a protection.
It's hard to answer that question, should, because there really isn't a you should for love.
Mhm.
So there's a couple things that come to mind for me. Just obviously, this is about creating a warm home, but it could be about creating a warm connection between people, between father and son. And Mike, your comment about the chronic anger is just, I don't, in a completely different context, the chronic angers could possibly even be referring to the cold being angry about the warmth and disrupting it, breaking it and splintering it because it would rather be there. But this man keeps bringing the hot stones in there, breaking it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're making me think now. Because the angers. You're saying that the house is producing those angers, chronic angers, chronic being
That
something
house.
that lasts for a long time. Maybe the house is always cold in the winter, and he's slowly getting up, Josephine, and rising. He knows it's rooms are warm, but maybe the house is still a bit
Yeah.
uncomfortable, and he's fearing that discomfort,
cold,
that
yeah.
coldness of the house
Totally.
itself.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, it could be for sure.
Yeah.
As you say, is it splintering the cold and breaking the cold?
Yeah.
It's interesting because I read that exactly the same way, Josephine, as that it was but then I go angry, I think of heat, I don't think of cold. So then that kind of it sort of went, oh, I don't know.
Well, and then I think of the human emotional expression of anger as soon as I read that word. So like there is a human component to it too. And it could be referring to both, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, could be.
And the cold splintering breaking, when the rooms were warm, he'd call. You know, it's an invitation.
And I agree with Helen. There certainly is an element, more than an element. I mean, certainly you get the impression that the father cares and is doing his duty for his family, and that he doesn't even give himself a break on Sundays, and make sure as best he can that the place is comfortable. And let's see, he had driven out the cold and polished the kid's shoes also. So yeah, but somebody, I agree also, somebody who's tough to get to know. It reminds me of my own father. That loves austere and lonely offices.
Yeah, I'm curious. I want to bring that up. Why love austere and lonely offices? To me, it sticks out.
Yeah.
This phrase.
So I see it as the father is the office. It's like it's to me, that's a description of the father.
What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? I think what I'm having trouble with is the word offices. It's an odd word. I think.
But does it add to the austere and lonely? Because when you think of offices, you think of work. You know, it's a place. It's not a home. You know, you've got a description of a home, and then you've got offices, which, you know, it's almost like work-home connection. And here he is working at home.
For me, it's the duty. Like, what is the role that love plays? It's not, for me, it's not reference to an actual physical space, but more so, you know, what did I know about how strict or lonely love would feel? Like that love would be presented in this way, that this would be the role that love would take.
And we, you know, the Father's expression of his love, how does that present?
So you're asking that slightly differently than you asked previously about the character of the Father. How are you differentiating that question?
The Father presents his love in austere and in a very lonely place. But he's, you know, what did I know of that? What did I know of this, of his love?
So is he saying it's not being recognized?
Mm-hmm. How is the Father's love presented?
In the actions.
In the actions, yeah.
The warming of the house. I mean, he's up earlier than anybody else. He's doing it on a Sunday, even though his hands are cracked and aching. And it just occurred to me, the hands again, the cracked and aching hands. Making the fire is, you know, is one thing to get the house warm. That is almost a necessity, right? But can you imagine someone with cracked and aching hands also taking the time to polish somebody else's shoes? That must be it could be painful, right? And I think that's certainly an expression of love that this man would do that as well, using his cracked and aching hands.
I'm really intrigued by Josephine when you said duty connected with the offices. That's kind of really stuck. Like I love this. It's like it's really kind of stuck with me because I'm going, okay, is there a duty here for the like where does that sit with his acts? Is there that sense of duty that he needs to do this? As in a sort of, you know, his father did it for him, or is he doing it out of him wanting to do, you know?
Yeah, is it heartfelt, you mean, or is it like out of a sense of it's my responsibility, and so you know, Alice should, or I need to, in front of it. Mm-hmm.
I think I have something here that might be helpful because I've seen this word offices used in other poetry and Shakespeare, and to Josephine's definition, and I think this applies here. A duty or function assigned to or assumed by someone. And often, it says it's often offices, as we see here with the S on the end, a service or beneficial act done for another. So through her example being through her kind offices, we were given a room with a view. So again, it does refer to the Father's duty, if you want to use that word.
Because if you then read that with duties, not offices at the end. So what did I know of love's austere and lonely duties? It's quite.
Yes.
Maybe the Father was, you know, up all night, lonely, laboring.
Just the things that he does by himself, you know, they're his acts that he does by himself, that it's like this. And there's also this sense of, you know, prediction to the day. You know, there's this isn't just a once-off occurrence. This happens. This is Sundays, like every Sunday he's doing this amongst, you know, there's this sort of I guess, treadmill of life
Mhm.
ongoing.
In the winter.
Mm.
I
Now,
wonder if it would be different if you wrote about a Sunday in the summer.
right,
Mm.
a very different story, a very different presentation of.
And I think the lonely also refers to the fact that the father is doing this alone.
Right.
You know, he's the one getting up and banking the fire and driving out the cold and polishing the shoes. And I picture him doing this by himself before anybody else is up, right? At least the child, the writer, says that he gets up after the rooms are warm. So while it's still cold out, the father is up managing the fire and polishing the shoes. So and then, you know, he does this alone. And even when the beneficiary, the child, gets up, he speaks indifferently to him, or she does. He, I think it's Robert Hayden, but you know, it seems like a lonely existence for the father.
It's still that there's almost like these acts or these offices belong to love, because they are love's austere and lonely offices. Like there is this recognition of warmth within these acts.
Beautiful.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, when we talk about narrative and we talk about people's struggle and trauma and their story as from where they came from, and you know, just knowing about Robert Hayden's history of his struggle, and I think it really is like there's trauma should be redeemed, or there should be, you know, you should be overcoming this, and there's a sense of understanding when you look back and that reflection of experience that could be indifferent, but really there's a sense of another way of looking at it. What do you think? This cold place that he lived through.
So whether this is an older person reflecting on that time.
Right.
Yeah.
And this comes up a lot in medicine. You know, I think when we talk about how people come and they live you live in your mind, and there's this struggle of, you know, who you are and where you come from and your story and a reflection on that, and then turning it around and looking at it with a different, broader, or even a deeper perspective.
Were you bringing with it the years since then of life experiences? And I mean, it's you sort of looking at it. I mean, even a week can be a difference, let alone years.
What did I know?
It's not what do I know.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah.
It sounds
And I
like
think it's, oh, sorry, Mike.
No, it's all right.
It's the opposite of what we would, the narrative we would use to describe love. We wouldn't necessarily describe love as strict or as alone, as something you do alone. You would, you know, in your mind, possibly, depending on, you know, the context of your background or story, think of love as something you do in connection with somebody.
Yeah.
So it's almost like he's surprised there at the end, like this love thing, it's done alone, like what?
I look at it as he's looking back into his childhood and realizing all the things that his father did sort of behind the scenes that he just took for granted. There were expressions of love. And I find as I focus on one part of the poem, like the last part, where we're talking about what did I know of love's austere and lonely offices, and he's speaking indifferently to the father, but you go back up to I find that I neglected the first part where it simply states that no one ever thanked this man, not just the writer, but no one.
Beautiful.
There must be more than just the writer and his father living together. So, and I'm now thinking that what Helen, I think it was, said about, or no, it may have been Josephine, or both of you, that he rises and dresses, fearing the chronic angers of that house, I think refers to the fact that the house has a tendency to be cold, and it's a chronic problem in that house to keep it warm. I don't think it necessarily refers to any troubled relationships. Beyond that, not necessarily anyway.
Well, especially the way you just referred to it as that house. So that the emphasis on that. Yeah.
Rather than any other house, or
Yeah, I think so.
So I'm going to now change the slide, and we're going to do our writing. You guys are aware of the rules of the writing. I'll give you a prompt, and it'll be 5 minutes. I'll have a timer and start the timer. Hit that set. And slide. Okay,
That's it.
there's a prompt. Write about love's austere and lonely offices. It's a difficult sentence. But I think it gives so much more. Anyways, I'll so I can start the timer and start now. You have a paper and pencil, or pen and pencil, pen, paper, and start. So it's a small group, and I'm hoping we can all share, but if you don't feel comfortable sharing, that's fine. You know, I think it's important to feel comfortable with that. And in writing, sometimes you write something you don't want to share. There's never an obligation to share. But,
Is it okay? I'm actually gonna go. It's very late. I'm finding myself getting really sleepy. So
did you want to share a little bit, or did you want to leave?
I did like I just my mind is sort of shutting off, and
Okay.
it's up, and I wrote 2 little sentences, and so it was really nice to look at that poem with you guys. So thank you so much
Here you go,
for
Sophie.
everybody.
Nice to meet you, Josephine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice to meet you again. Hopefully I'll see you on the next one.
Josephine, may I just quickly ask who the physio in Australia is that connected
Oh, I
you
was
in?
going to ask you, do you know Kit Wisdom?
I do know her very well. I
No
thought it might be
way.
Kit.
I was going to ask you. No way. Helen, what do
Okay.
you, I was going to say, what's your last name, if you don't mind sharing it, I'll connect with you.
Yeah, no,
on
that's
LinkedIn.
okay. Davison. If you say to Kit, it's Helen from Narrative Medicine, she'll know me.
That's so cool. I love Kit. Okay, cool.
All right, nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks so much,
Take
Alya.
care, Josephine. I'll tell you what I wrote. Sort of.
And as you read, you don't have to qualify it. Just tell us.
No,
what you meant.
no, and it was just sort of a stream of thoughts that came to me. So
Yes.
after you all put together in a nice package. In fact, I haven't looked at it for a few minutes, so I'll just read it like I was reading it for the first time. The duties of love can be fulfilled in selfless ways. Love is not always rewarded with gratitude, but the mere act of loving may be a reward in itself.
Mhm.
Love can take place in harsh conditions. True love is not suppressed by harsh conditions or lack of gratitude. Acts of love do not depend on expressions of gratitude.
It's beautiful, Mike.
Mm.
How did that feel for you as you wrote that? And now reading it out loud, how does that feel for you?
It made me feel good because as I was writing and thinking, it occurred to me that, you know, the absence of immediate gratitude. I mean, we don't love others because we're expecting gratitude. I mean, it's nice, right? But then it occurred to me that the fact that one can perform an act of love in itself is a reward to that very person who is giving the love. And I think as I thought of it and thought of it in my own life and my own experience, I think that's true. If you love someone, you know, polish their shoes and it'd be nice to be thanked, maybe, but you know, you know in your heart you performed an act of love for someone whom you do love. So it's all okay. Maybe the gratitude will come later. And I've experienced that with my own children, as maybe you have. It feels good later when, you know, like my son has told me recently, he's graduated from college a couple of years ago, and it's been 3 years now. You know, how much he he really is grateful for what we did for him to send him to college and pay for it. But it occurred to me as we were doing it, I wasn't hoping for a thank you all the time, but when it did come, it certainly was a nice feeling. But even the doing it was, for him, whom I love, was a reward enough for me.
Mhm. Yes, my daughter calling me. Hold on.
There you go.
When you hear, there you go, right? I think loves austere and lonely offices. I like how that, sorry.
I think it's how that kind of you connected to that love exists without recognition. It's separate. And when you were reading, Mike, it kind of made me think about when we do acts of love that are anonymous almost and it sort of made me connect in with the, it's like the simple thing of buying something from Father Christmas is now like, that's a gift, an expression of love, but there's no recognition for it because it's not from you, or it's from, there's that sort of anonymity to it, and it's so freeing to actually do an act of love that is not connected to you, because then there isn't any burden of gratitude that is needed in that. And I kind of thought, oh, how do we it made me think to myself, how do I kind of bring those acts of love into my life that don't, that there is no possible way to have gratitude. So then there's not that sort of, oh, they didn't say thank you, which you kind of hope that you don't do it just so someone says thank you. But it is, it is nice, but not having it there as a possibility doesn't have, it kind of creates that well, they can't because they don't know. It sort of, it made me go, I wonder how that differs.
And I think the gratitude, if you're performing an act for someone, and if the only thing you're interested in is the gratitude, then I don't think it may be a nice act, but it's probably really not an act of love that you're performing. If your interest lies only in gratitude from that person. Right.
It really does give a whole meaning to love, a whole different meaning of love's acknowledgement. How do we acknowledge love? It can be very lonely. It can be firm. It can be, a cold. But there's still, love can be all those things, and its presence in all those places.
But there's such a difference for different people, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you feel comfortable sharing your?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where does love reside? In the most unexpected of places, it may take hold, transforming the space, softening, nourishing, connecting. Can love exist alone, or does it reach out and find another? Perhaps sometimes over timelines, connecting different offices, different people in one office, or at times to self-love, connecting to self, the duty of love.
And self-love, it's a whole different ballgame, right? For many of us.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice. Uh-huh.
I
I
think
like,
the whole offices is like that offices and duty that's
yeah,
sort of stuck.
Yeah.
I realize that's kind of stuck with me a little bit with like, yeah. Is it the duty? Yeah. Oh.
yeah,
But I think it's a duty that one, willingly takes upon oneself. It's not a requirement. So we perform these duties, out of love, not because we're required to do so, but because the love exists in the first place.
But then you go, how do you learn about those acts? How do we learn about how to express love, or what is love? And there's that sort of learnt acts or behavior that we associate with expressions of love.
yes,
So then does that where it falls into that sense of duty? It's like if you don't give yourself space to explore this, there is a learnt behavior of, oh, this is how a parent shows a love for a child. We learn that from our parent. That's the how much do we give ourselves space to explore what that actually is, without kind of feeling that this is the duty, this is your duty to express love, or the duty of how you express or communicate love.
I think that's the child's interpretation of a parent's love or lack thereof is often the starting place for a lot of trauma. I've experienced it myself with my dad, and he's dead now. But when I was a kid, there are things that I've come to realize that had me thinking from his actions that I wasn't a person who was deserving of love, and that that's affected my relationships with people. And but then as I look at it and I talk about it with you, I think that there were times that in his own way he did express love to me. Maybe didn't realize it at the time. So it's hard when you've got two different people trying to interpret the other's actions, and often there's a lot of potential to misread people.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like it could be so complex and it can be so simple at the same time.
Beautiful. I'm going to read mine.
Oh, I'm sorry, Alya. We didn't know you wrote one.
I don't mind.
It's the boss.
Love is lonely. Love is a lonely place, an office of duty, a requirement to be in. But what is it we know? We know with ourselves. We know only from ourselves what we think we know. If only we know more, what love can be, and more, what love is. Love is strong and firm. It's an austere guide to honor. We force love to be expressed. Speak from your heart. I like you, how you are or will be. I see it now when I take time love is not always a gift or a present. It is hard. It is painful. It is without gratitude.
Yeah, it can be,
Mm.
for sure, it can be painful.
I love how it kind of
Thank you.
moved from a almost like a restricted space to then just this open, this sense of expanse in your words. Like I just sort of felt that. And then there's the I like you. It was like, or I can't remember your exact words, or how, like I like you or will be. Like there's this that, oh, there's that conditional love.
Yes.
Kind of you realize there's just so much in there, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's so much to be said about love.
Mm.
And I think the, you know, when you first read this poem, it really wasn't, it has a lot of oddity to it. And then when you really read it, the oddity is what questions love, brings the questions of how we look at love.
Mm. But that's the thing with that poem, with that oddity, it then allows people to explore their own
Mhm.
concept and construct of love. And you're then bringing that in because there's space in there for, you know, for you to take it wherever you need to take it.
I think also, as you were speaking, that, you know, when we analyzed the poem, we focused on how the love was being given by the father. And something one of you said got me thinking of, you know, how it's received also is something to think about. It's often the idea of the gratitude of not being expressed. I actually lost my train of thought here. Anyway,
Find wonder.
it's almost 2 o'clock in the morning, right?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, what was it?
Like how it wandered into the space of love and love and
It's like almost that two sides to it. It's like how it's given and how it's received.
Yeah, well, I mean, we often take things for granted, right? I mean, you know, the shoes are going to be polished and the house is going to be warm, and you know, we don't even we may not even realize that you know, we've been the recipients of someone's love when these things take place.
yeah.
I think that often happens.
Mm.
And maybe the lesson there is just to be more aware of things, and just awareness, and realize that you know, if my shoes polished, that and I didn't do it, that, you know,
You didn't have to.
someone, yeah, I didn't have to, and someone
Yeah.
someone potentially showed their love for me by doing it. I don't think we think enough about those type of things.
Well,
Let's do another one.
yeah. Yeah, this is really, I think even though we were a small group, I felt very much like I just wanted to be, you guys to just explore, I think.
Yeah, it's fun.
And connect through this question mark of love.
Mm.
It's just,
Yeah.
I mean, you realize how, like, I mean, it is something so simple, and yet it is something so complicated. The more, you know, the more you go in and so, as you say, sort of explore, you can kind of like zoom out and zoom in
mhm.
in in a sentence almost.
Yeah, I think it's a great poem.
Yeah, and the fact that an act of love in itself can provide one with the gratitude, even if it's not expressed by the recipient, is reminds me of something. It's always stuck with me. When I was much younger, I guess I was a teenager, and my cousin, maybe he already had his 5 children. He may have had all of them by that time, and he worked in a steel plant, and one of his co-workers, who also had a family, had lost his job, and it was Christmas right around that time. Anyway, and I remember so many years ago, this was he bought presents for his friend's family, and we wrapped them, and I didn't know the other guy, but anyway, so what happened was we put him in a big bag, and we drove over to his house, and I was his helper on this, so he was driving, I didn't, and we pulled up, and he said, "Okay, get out of the car and take that bag and put it on the porch, and ring the doorbell, and run like hell after that," which I did. And when I rang the doorbell and then ran down to the car, you saw the porch light come on, and they had heard the bell ring and they were going to come out. And we just drove away, and there was it was anonymous, right? And all I did was I was just the delivery boy. But the fact that he did this, out of love, expecting nothing in return, when he had 5 children of his own, it had an impact on my life from that day forward. So, when you perform these acts of love, and it's not just one person performing the act and one recipient. That I wasn't really involved in this except to deliver the package and ring the doorbell, but it's affected my life, from that point. And so that love is something that just permeated, the people who were, close to it. And again, it was done anonymously. I'm sure maybe the guy figured out or never knew who provided these gifts for his family that year when he was unable to.
Yeah. It's
so
the act.
The act, and not the gratitude. Right? It's not the gratitude. It's the act.
Yeah. Helen, we're going to end with this question. I think both of you, after reading this poem and responding and reflecting on it, how do you feel?
I think I feel curious about the idea of the duty of love, or love's duty. I always connect, the sort of the essence of love and purity and just this beautiful thing. And yet I wonder about it's like with Mike's story about the doing it anonymous. It just absolves any sort of duty of it. It is just a pure act, because there's almost like no burden of the family to be show gratitude for it. Like it's just, it can stand alone. And I think it's then how I sort of go, okay, how do I connect with that more in life?
Yeah. Yeah, I like how you opened up with the curiosity of it and taking that and allowing that to be something you want to expand on and integrate and apply in so many ways that love can be given in acts of so many ways love can be given. What about you, Mike? How do you feel after this exercise?
Well, I feel as we look at what we've done in the context of listening to people's stories and narrative medicine, that, there's from analyzing the poem and talking about it, just makes me more aware of the fact that there's a lot more to someone's story than might meet the eye at first. And I think, that's really the whole, raison d'etre of this narrative medicine, right? Is to, and this workshop is to learn how to listen and to think about what people tell us and to interpret what they say carefully, and I think that's what we've done here, right? We read the poem, we discussed it, we came to some conclusions, we changed our minds, and as a result, I think we know more about Robert Hayden. I guess he's the person who, he's the child, I still think, in the poem. But I think it's a good, we're working on the skill, right, to listen.
Yeah. And when we opened and we talked about what is narrative medicine, I think just listening to the story of other, what we would think would be very traumatic or would be very hard or would be, allows us to heal as we really truly go deeper into the story and even allow people to learn or appreciate or even acknowledge their struggle as they would see it. But expanding on that perspective.
There's almost a respect for that space as well, isn't it?
Yes.
By having that curiosity and asking those questions and kind of connecting with the person, you are respecting the space that them and their story holds.
Yeah. And it heals us. I think you talked about, sharing, how do you share your, sometimes it's also healing yourself too, as you understand somebody else's story and connect with it. You connected with this, with your father, and, can see things differently from your own experience as we reflect on this. I think it's beautiful. I love how medicine isn't always a pill. Medicine it can be as simple as looking at something or listening to something or reading something beautiful.
As you say, it's the art of medicine.
Yeah, and taking that into you.
And the healing that you said you're a physical therapist, Helen. Yeah, I think Alya is a doctor. I think, and for me too, the healing that we offer people in part is their realization that there's someone there who cares enough to listen to them.
Right.
That in itself
Hmm.
can be very healing, I think.
Yeah.
What's that communication of value, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
I value you,
Yeah.
and to feel valued in wherever you are in the world and within your own life path is I think to have that sense of you know, it's so easy for people to feel undervalued, you know, not valued and not important. And
Right.
so, you know, for that time and space, whether it's through a, you know, academic teaching or if it's in a, you know, clinical practice in medicine, that's still holding space for that person to be valued.
In any space.
And I think that, you know, again, as you're speaking, thinking, once a person realizes that there's someone who values them, cares about them, who's willing to listen to their story, and maybe unexpectedly so, that may cause that person to change their behavior in a very positive way. Maybe, you know, knowing that someone cares that much will enable them to make choices that would be beneficial to their health.
Right.
Saying, you know, that
Yeah.
I was in despair, or I didn't care, you know, whether I, you know, had an unhealthy diet or whatever the case might be that is leading to some sort of disease, perhaps. But now that, you know, there's a listener there, someone who cares, I think may cause them to reevaluate themselves and say, you know, maybe I should take better care of myself. You know, someone cares for me.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed this workshop, and thank
Yeah.
you, Helen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you both for staying up late.
Yeah, we're probably moving this time to an earlier time. I don't know if I'll talk with Julia. I don't know if that would that affect you, Helen?
Oh, it's still, I mean, this is early afternoon, so I can easily move forward,
Yeah.
you know, so that it's in a morning. There's definitely room to still be in our time zone
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
easily. Yes, thank
I,
you.
I
Thank
think
you.
I'd rather have it a bit earlier.
Yeah.
'Cause it's
We got to get up
I'm sort of nocturnal anyway. So
on the
but
weekends.
it's 2 a.m.
Yeah.
here.
Well, thank you.
Hey, oh yeah, that was
Peter,
great.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you both.
Thank
Yeah, Helen, it's wonderful to meet you.
you. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye
Good
bye.
day, and see you later. Thanks, Alya.
Thank you.